So let's take a look at what we discovered, what we've learned, and what we now know. It was only a few months ago when the idea of social distancing or quarantine or lockdown or whatever name that you want to use, but we were told that we would have to stay home for an indefinite amount of time. And only 3 months ago, maybe even 2 months ago, the idea of staying home frightened us, it horrified us, and we were certain that it would be a disaster. To stay home with the children 24 hours a day, no school, no work, no travel, no shopping. It seemed impossible, undoable. We were sure it was going to be a disaster. And then there were couples. For them, the thought of being together in the house for more than 4 hours at a time, this was not going to be pretty. And even the experts, the police, were saying there's going to be an increase in domestic violence. It's going to go through the roof. It didn't happen. It wasn't at all like what we expected. In fact, it turned out to be quite nice. Children like being home with each other and with their parents. And parents kind of enjoyed having them home, having a life together. And couples who were on the verge of divorce practically suddenly saw each other differently. They were grateful to have each other. So we are pleasantly surprised that we are better than we thought. But what is scary, what is frightening, is that only 2 months ago or 3 months ago, we thought that this way of living, this attitude that we have to get out of the house as often as possible, as quickly as possible, and stay away for as long as possible, we thought that that was normal. That's how we were living, that's how we were thinking, and we thought it was okay. Now, looking back at it, it's quite embarrassing. How did we get so far off the track of truth? Parents dreaded the thought of being home with their kids. Do the children know this? Do the children know that the parents will do anything to get away from them, to send them to school, or for the parents to leave the house and go to work? And if the children know this, can they possibly have a healthy self-image? So that was one shock, to discover how unnatural our lives had become. And we didn't even realize it. The other thing was work. People go to work every day, all over the world, people go to work. And that's considered a moral obligation if you have a good work ethic. If you are devoted and diligent in your work, and you show up and you do a good job, that's a mensch. But now, looking back at it, the workplace is so toxic. It's such an unhealthy environment. There's tension in the air, anxiety, fear. What if I lose my job? What if I'm let go? What if I'm replaced? What if the boss or the employer is not happy with me? What if I'm the employer and I don't like how I'm running the company and it's not going well and the competition is threatening? So there's anxiety, there's tension, there's competition, there's greed. A very unhealthy environment. And not surprisingly, as a result of this, everybody is on medication. Antidepressants, anti-anxiety, uppers, downers, whatever they are, everybody's on medication. And yet we went about our business as if it were normal, as if this is the only way and the right way to live. It's pretty shocking when we look back at it. So going forward, when this thing is over, when the quarantine is over completely, do we want to go back? Do we want to go back to that life? I don't think so. And even if we wanted to, we shouldn't. We should not go back to a state of mind where getting away from the children is absolutely necessary, avoiding too much time with your spouse, because it's going to be nasty and it's going to be painful and just no fun, no pleasure. We don't want to go back to that. We don't want to go back to a toxic work environment. And finally, we don't want to send our children back to the schools the way the schools were. Because one of the other things that we discovered is that the child who the school told the parents that he's not a good student, he's not into learning, he has learning disabilities. Now that the child was home, the parents discovered the child loves to read, the child loves to do projects, he's an intelligent and resourceful child. What do you mean he's not a good learner? There's something wrong. There's also something wrong with a school that does not inspire good behavior. If education doesn't make you a better person, is there any point to the education? See, here's how it becomes funny. The whole point of the education is that you should graduate and get a job so that every morning you can go to this toxic place and suffer from anxiety and depression. What were we doing? We don't want to go back to that. So let's think of a better model. And this means that we are free. We have been liberated by this lockdown. We have been liberated from our old habits. We now have an option. We can go back, or we can design a better way. So it's interesting that this whole thing happened during the Pesach season, just before, after. Pesach is when we receive our freedom. Freedom from enslavement. So we have been freed from the enslavement to these habits, to the thinking, to the conviction that this is the only way life can work. In fact, we actually thought that that was life. Getting on a plane, running here, there, going out to eat, entertainment, sports events, everything out of the house. That's life. And if you take those things away, then we have no life left. So now we discovered we can live without all those things. Not only can we live, we can actually relax, we can enjoy our families, we can even get to know ourselves better. Now, now we're alive. Now we discovered where our lives happen. Where do you live? Not in the office, not in the factory, not on the airplane, not in the restaurant. And children don't live in school. All of that is commentary. All of that is the support system for your life. It's not your life. Life is at home. So now, let's see if we can find a nicer model. First, the workplace. You go to work because you need to feed your family. That's perfectly moral, noble, selfless. You go to work to feed your family. And not to feed them minimum, bread and water, to feed them well, dignified. Give them clothing, not rags, nice clothing, appropriate for the dignity of the family. And you need furniture, you need appliances, you need a car, all the things that make life comfortable and livable. This is why you go to work, so that your family will have those things. And if you're alone, well, you got to have them too. So how did it happen that this workplace, where decent human beings, noble human beings, get together to feed their families and to support life, how did that place become toxic? How did it become a rat race? You gather well-intentioned people, mature, wise, responsible human beings, and it becomes toxic. It becomes nasty, literally reduced to dog eat dog. And then you come home after a day of that, you have no patience for your family, you have no tolerance, you can't listen, you can't hear, you can't deal with it. You're already poisoned. So what's the alternative? If you're going to work, and it doesn't matter what the nature of your job is, white collar, blue collar, you're going to work because you have a responsibility, you have a certain human dignity. You're not gonna eat garbage out of the garbage can. You're a mensch, and you get together with other people doing the same thing. You also meet your customers, your suppliers, who are doing the same thing. Shouldn't we be helping each other? Isn't that the whole point? It turns out that the only reason human beings have to work for a living, and we are the only creatures in the universe who do that, every other living being has their needs available in their environment. They don't have to go out of their environment. Only the human being has this artificial way of making a living, of surviving. You have to do all these arbitrary, unrelated activities in order to eat. A guy working in a car factory, he has to put together car parts in order to have bread and meat. What do car parts have to do with eating? You see, when an animal needs food, he goes out, finds the food, and he eats it. Doesn't have to go to school, doesn't have to get a job, doesn't have to get a check and then have a bank account so that he can bank the check and exchange it for money, and then he can go and buy the food, and now he finally has something to eat. So you have to explain to your children. Every morning when you leave the house and the children say, "Where are you going? Why are you going away?" You say, "Because I love you very much and I want to take care of you." So the child says, "So where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to manufacture cars." So how is that an expression of love for us? And what if it's not just a job, but a career? A career. That's like your other life. The reason we need to go to work, the true reason, is not because we need to eat. It's because God wants us to meet people we wouldn't otherwise meet. Imagine if we didn't have to go to work. We would live in tiny little communities, never venture outside, never meet anybody from another culture, from another religion, from another part of the world. So God arranges it in such a fascinating way that in order to put bread on your table, you have to go to Singapore or to Taiwan or to China. And you have to get to know how people think and how people feel and what their customs are and what their beliefs are and what their religions are. So the world becomes a smaller world. You get to see more, you travel further, and the result is that the world becomes smaller. People meet people. That's why. And what happens when people meet people? You have an opportunity to do them a favor, to help them in some way. Beginning with, help them make a living. Why is it only for your living that you're there? Where is that written? When you meet somebody, there's a reason, there's a purpose. Particularly if in order to meet this person, you had to fly thousands of miles away from your home. For what? Just to come back with a few dollars? It's to meet the people you're going to meet, and you can do them a big favor. You can enlighten them. You can share something important with them, help them out in some way, or maybe they can help you out in some way. But when people get together, when people meet people, they help each other. There was a rabbi back in Russia. He was very, very pious, very serious, no-nonsense guy. And when they hired him to be the rabbi of this community, he immediately passed a very strict law that there will be no talking in the synagogue, in the shtibel. And they had a lot of respect for him. If he said no talking, there was no talking. After a few months, the rabbi got up and said, "I changed my mind. It's okay, talk. Because what happened was, in those few months that they hadn't talked, people came to the rabbi with serious problems. This guy, he made a living by hauling wood on a wagon, and his horse got old and weak, and it can't schlep the wagon anymore. So he has no income. He hasn't had what to eat in days. So the rabbi said, "How long has this been going on?" He says, "It's been going on for a long time. But when we talked in shul, I shared my problem with people and they helped me out. But I haven't told anybody what's going on with me, so nobody's helping me." And the rabbi said, "Oh, I think we made a mistake. people get together, they need to talk. Of course, they're going to talk silly stuff. But if they don't talk, then they don't get to talk important stuff. So better that they should talk and sometimes waste time and say things inappropriate, but at least people's needs will not be neglected. So why do we meet people? Why does God arrange it in such a way that you have to travel halfway across the world? Because there's somebody there you need to meet, and you will do each other a favor. In that environment, would you need antidepressants? That would be a noble environment. You would go to work every morning with the intention of making the world a more livable place, making life more comfortable, more pleasant, more enjoyable for as many people as you can. And every time you meet someone you've never met before, it's not just a new customer, a new avenue of business. It's a new opportunity to do something really kind, really noble. That's what business should be. I'm hoping, I'm not in the business world, so I don't know it firsthand, but I'm hoping that because of this shutdown and because practically everyone is bankrupt, we're not going to have a choice. If we want to start the economy again and nobody has money, how is it going to work? If I have a wonderful product, it's not going to do me any good if nobody can afford to buy it. So what do? Give it away for free? How is that going to help the economy? So it seems almost as if we have no choice. We're going to have to help each other. We're going to have to trust you. I'm going to have to hope for your success, because if you're not successful, I have no customers. Or if the manufacturer is not successful, I've got nothing to buy. We're going to have to become not only win-win philosophy, we're going to have to really become generous and really desire the other person's success. That's a different environment. Then, as long as we're thinking out of the box, let's go way beyond the box. It's been a long time, very long time. Our thinking has been very restricted, linear. Go to work, make money, buy wholesale and sell retail. Get a job, get a check at the end of the week. That's the way it works. We haven't found any innovations in 1,000 years. There are people who have been thinking and talking about this. Why do we work 6 days a week and then live for 1 day? Isn't that a little unequal, a little top-heavy? 6 days of work so that we can live 1 day out of the week? Shouldn't it be the other way? Shouldn't there be 1 day of work and then you live for 6 days? So people have been talking about a 5-day week, a 4-day week. Why work at all? See, the way we've been thinking is you got to work every single day because there's competition. If you don't get to the market early, somebody else will get there and there'll be nothing left for you. Why haven't we found a way to exploit, some people don't like that word, to exploit nature, to find a way to extract from nature everything we need so that we don't have to keep doing it every single day. Just for example, if we had solar energy, if we found a way to use solar energy, you put something on your roof and you collect solar energy. And that's it. You can forget about the need for energy. It's all available for free. And you don't have to do anything. It's done. We have found a way to use the sun's energy to make everything run and warm. If energy were that free, cost nothing, and takes no more work, once you put up the collector, it's done. Yeah, you can work 1 day a week, be enough. Because if energy is free, manufacturing becomes cheap. It's like if airplanes could fly for free on solar energy, how much would they charge for a ticket? They need enough to pay the few people, the pilot, and for the peanuts that they give you. How much can that cost? In other words, nature can provide all our needs on a consistent, effortless level. Because I remember in the 60s, there was a panic. People were trying to create a panic. We're running out of food. There were 5 billion people in the world and we're running out of, we can't feed 5 billion mouths. And soon there's going to be 6 billion and we're all going to starve. That was in the 60s. Now we're getting close to 8 billion people. And we still have too much food. Because the panic was based on, we produce a certain amount of food. It's enough to feed 5 billion, but not 6 billion. So produce more food. I don't know if the thinking was, we've maxed out. We can't get more wheat out of the earth. People figured it out, and they were able to get more wheat to the point where we were throwing wheat into the ocean. Didn't know what to do with it. And we're not thoughtful enough to deliver it to those people who didn't have. Or the governments wouldn't allow it. The point is, there is no shortage of food. There's no shortage of energy. There's no shortage of water. We just keep doing this halfway job. We make enough for today, and then we got to do it again tomorrow. This is not efficient. We should figure out a way where we can stimulate the earth to produce everything we need, get our energy from nature, get our everything. What is this style, this lifestyle of having to work every single day, most of the day, so that you can live, but then you don't have time for living? So now we have tension. I want vacation, but I got to go to work. The company's not going to pay for my... This is so artificial. It's so unnatural. So maybe now that we've not worked for a while, maybe we can think out of the box. Why are we enslaved by this? That would be exciting, wouldn't it? And the schools? What would be a nicer model of a school? Well, first of all, no tension. Don't create tension. Don't ruin a child's enthusiasm for learning by all these rules and regulations and tests. And report cards. Let the students breathe. The main job of a teacher and of a school is not to fill a kid's head with information. That's too mechanical. The main job of a school is to cultivate and stimulate the child's enjoyment and pleasure in using their mind. Because we're human beings. Our greatest gift is our mind. Our greatest pleasure is understanding and knowledge. So if a child feels like he's really using his mind and he's getting information and he's thinking clearly and he understands the subject that he's studying, he feels like a human being. You don't have to test him and force him and punish him and give him bad grades. What is all that? It's a military school? And I don't mean to be permissive. On the contrary, challenge the child. But challenge, don't threaten. Don't create a tense environment where the mind just shuts down. So there's a lot we can do to just make life livable. And where is the blueprint for a life that is livable? That's the Torah. The reason Jews are still here, which is amazing, and most people would call it miraculous, the reason Jews are still around is because we have a lifestyle that is livable. Now, the world out there makes our lives miserable for 2,000 years. So external forces were enough to destroy the Jewish people forever. But the internal health, the healthy lifestyle, has kept us alive and in existence, despite what the outside world tries to do. The Torah is the blueprint of life. It doesn't mean that non-Jews have to keep all the mitzvahs that were given to Jews. But the wisdom of the Torah is universal. There's another thing we discovered, and this is more closer to home. The synagogues were all closed. There were no public seders. Many people are in the habit for many, many years of going to a public seder for Pesach, either to Bubby's house, Zadie's house, to a Chabad house, to public seder, to the synagogue. In fact, most of Judaism was becoming a public activity, a public event, a community event. We were forgetting that our relationship with God is personal. God relates to individuals, not to large groups. Now, when you do have a large group of precious individuals, like when all your children come together for an event, since every child is a source of infinite pleasure, when you have them all together, wow. But if each child was not a pleasure, and they all come together, nothing exciting. So what is the power of a minyan? When you get 10 Jews together and then you can say all sorts of holy things and read from the Torah and so on. Why is that so powerful? Because every one of the 10 is infinitely precious. When you get 10 such things together, then it's awesome. So to remind us that he really is interested in the individual, God arranged a situation where you close the shuls. Now there is suspicion being discussed, being voiced, that maybe it wasn't even necessary. For health purposes, maybe it wasn't even necessary to close the synagogue. Maybe. It doesn't matter. The fact is it happened. And from the event, from the fact that it happened, we realize something. We realize that Jewish life doesn't happen in a synagogue. It doesn't happen in public. Jewish life lives in the Jewish home. Because God looks at us as individuals, not as groups. So somebody put it very nicely. He said, God is very old, and yet he has no grandchildren. Do you know any grandchildren that God's grandchildren? No, he has none. I have grandchildren. I have great-grandchildren, and God has none. Not one grandchild. How sad is that? And the reason God has no grandchildren is because every Jew is his child. So I am his child. My children should be his grandchildren. But they're not. They're his children as much as I am. Which means that my children's relationship to God is direct, personal. It's not through me. That's an important reminder.